Welcome to the Build with Boundaries podcast. My name is Mahnaz, and this podcast is for mums who want to carve out time so that you can work in ways that work for you, your life, your family, and of course, your business. Together, we will discover why you are not prioritizing your business and the actions that you can take so you can live an intentional, productive, and fulfilled life without mum guilt. So let's dive in to today's episode. Let me welcome my guest, Amanda O'Rourke, to the show. So Amanda is a business and leadership coach and has been in business for 16 years. In her first business, she led a team of 22 and had over 200 regular customers. In 2019, she successfully sold that business for 6 figures and retrained as a coach. Amanda has appeared on television on the BBC's What to Buy and Why, and has been featured in a number of publications, including Business Franchise, The Franchise Magazine, and The Lady. Her mission is to help business owners and leaders do well and be well in the process so that they experience true success. Her vision is to help thousands of people to see and share their light to make the world a brighter place. Hi everyone, welcome Amanda to the Build with Boundaries podcast. I'm excited to have you on. Do say hello to the listeners and do tell us more about who you are and how you help your clients.
Thanks, Mahnaz. It's really lovely to be here. So I am a business and leadership coach. That's what I work. That's my modus operandi, if you like. I work essentially with business owners who are looking to grow their business and maybe exit it long term as well. But my principal objective is to help them to find their why in their business and to align with that so that they can really integrate their success into their being. I think my story is that I didn't ever get to that point, or I felt like I hadn't got to that point. I think I did at the very end, which was probably a little bit too late. But I help people now manage things like stress and overwhelm within their business as well, because I think that is something that comes up for a lot of people. And interestingly, when I realised where it was coming from, that enabled me to cope with it far better. And maybe I'll share a bit of that later.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you, Amanda. Yeah, totally. I mean, that overwhelm is like different stages of your business, isn't it? All that you go through, and there's just such a learning curve, and overwhelm is definitely in there to different levels across your journey. So it's interesting how, having been there, you're like going back, and it's almost like helping yourself what you needed back then, isn't it? I think a lot of us set up our business in that way, and we can see that what wasn't helpful. So it's always great when we've been there ourselves and have that experience. So I love that. So tell me then how you got into the coaching, because it's not like you wake up one day and think, right, okay, I'm going to help other people to get clear on their vision and their why. So how did that journey go? Tell me about your story.
Well, it was quite a circuitous route, so I'll give you the abridged version probably. I started in corporate. I actually went into a corporate environment straight from university, and I stayed there for 18 years. Sort of climbed
Right.
the corporate ladder quite carefully and quite slowly, I should imagine, if by some comparisons. But I was really happy there for the main. But there was something niggling in me for quite some time, and I'd always had, strangely, this idea that I was going to run my own business.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of something deep within that I'd kind of ignored and pushed away, and I couldn't ignore it very much longer. And eventually, I decided I was going to do it. So I jumped ship, bought myself a franchise, and started a business, which I did really well at. And on the face of it, I was really, really very successful. I grew my business the second year by 115%. It was doubling every year. It was
Oh,
crazy, the
right.
growth. But what most people who will be listening to this podcast realize is having your own business is the biggest and the hardest self-development journey you'll ever go on. And at times I was really quite overwhelmed with all that I had to do. And my stress levels just kept creeping up and up and up until eventually I developed chronic anxiety, which meant I was waking every day
Right.
early in the morning with thoughts of disaster, catastrophe, anything you name. It just became, yeah. And I now know that a lot of things that we think we prove for ourselves, we'll look for it, and it'll affirm what we believe. And
Yeah.
therefore, everything I was dreaming up, well, not everything, but a lot of things I was dreaming up came true. And so it became a vicious circle, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I've since realised actually that the opposite can be true as well. If you start to see the good and look for the
Yeah.
good,
Yeah.
that can actually be validated in your experience as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, so what I noticed as well within my business is I had 22 employees at its height, and what I realised was my words mattered to the people that worked for me, and I could influence them in the way that they worked, but also in the way that they thought about themselves. And I noticed that things like gratitude, praise, compassion all really worked well with human beings. It sounds crazy thinking and
Mm-hmm.
saying it out loud because
Yeah.
duh. But for me, it was, I was very much the sort of, strong-minded head, sort of headstrong businesswoman and like, get the job done kind of thing. And I'd forgotten who I truly was. At heart was a team player who loved, you know, people, nurturing people and bringing people on to make them see who they truly are at their core. Um, and that realization made me sort of explore coaching an opportunity. I'd gone into my first business with an exit strategy. I'd actually said right from the get go, I'm going to give this 10 years. Eventually, it was 11 in fact, because it took me 2 years to sell the business. But it was it was a great point in my life when I realised that I could now do what I think I was here to do.
Yeah.
Um, and I think we all have different purposes through our life, and we find purpose in our life. But I think that aside from motherhood, which I think is a lot of people think that's their greatest achievement, or it could be. For me, it's also about showing other people that they have light within them. They just can't see it.
Yeah.
And it's about bringing that out into the open and talking about vision. That's my vision, is to help people see and share their light and make the world a brighter place.
Oh, that's beautiful, Amanda. You're right. I mean, we get so caught up in what we're doing, but often really digging deep into what it is that we're here for. That's where that impact and that feeling like you've done what you wanted to, what your heart, kind of your soul desire. That's at
Mm.
a completely different level. And like you say, we have other responsibilities as a mother, as other duties and things that we are doing or taking care of, but sometimes we just can't see it because we're so caught up in doing like day-to-day stuff and just getting stuck in. But it really matters, it really matters when we can be ourselves. And in order for us to be ourselves, we have to understand what our why is and what's going to make us feel like we're fulfilled. So yeah, I love that you help others to get more clear on that, because what's going to be more clear than understanding your vision in the best way possible, because we all have a vision. So let's move on to the vision, because this is what we our tasty topic for today. um Business vision. Let's start with the vision statement then, because it can feel like it's really difficult. Once you set it, this has got to be something like huge and massive. Other people might have like dreams that are way bigger than others, so there can be different types of vision. So how do you describe like what a vision statement is?
I think in essence it's the desired future state of the company, but behind that it's, what are you trying to achieve long term? Um, what do you want to get to? Where do you want to get to? And who do you want to be in the process? And I think that's the first one that I would always start with, is the being, because
Mm,
somebody very wise once said to me, success is more about being than doing.
yes.
And
Oh,
being a doer, when she said that to me, I was like, oh, it was kind of a big realization that I got it back to front.
yeah.
So I think if you can actually look honestly within and say, who am I trying to be in this process? Or who do I want to be?
Yeah.
That can really help you clarify everything. I think. And
Mm,
for me, a lot of people don't know what they want. I know you said,
yeah.
people have vision, but in my experience, they don't. You look at some major companies, they don't have a vision statement. Even Nike, they've on their website, there's a vision statement, but it's a mission statement. It's blended, and
Right.
that can be very confusing for the individuals that are working for that company. I think Nike's safe. Let's just put that out there. But I think, if you're a small business and you're starting out, it's important to have that
Yeah.
distinction. And I think people do get mission and vision mixed up. So
Muddled up.
if you think
Hmm.
mission is what you're doing right now, this is in the
Yeah.
moment, that's what you're doing and everyday basis. But your vision is what you're hoping to achieve. So you achieve your vision by doing your mission, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
I think
that's
it's the big questions that you need to ask yourself from the get-go is, what do I want? Where do I want to go? Who do I want to be?
yeah. They're big questions, totally. And yeah, sometimes they're difficult to answer, and
Hmm.
or sometimes we don't even ask ourselves that question. I love how you said the doing and being, because
Mm.
as a previous more focused on doer, doing things and being a doer, I think that maybe it's just that natural progression, just like you said, that you've kind of realised that it was back to front. And, that really
Mm.
resonated with me, because I think having myself being in the corporate world as well, you are a doer, when you're especially in the corporate world, you're not attached to any vision or mission or anything at all. It's very detached, and you are just there to do the thing, and your results are measured by what you do. So that can have this effect, and I wonder if it is something that's kind of cultural in those senses, that it kind of models us in a way and just molds us into something. But as an entrepreneur and a solopreneur, we simply can't. Like you said, we have to stand out. We have to be who we are, and if we're not really sure who we are, then we can't really express that very well. So I think the work that you do is amazing, because it's about like laying those foundations, isn't it? Having that understood before you start doing the work and doing the doing, and thinking about the vision as the who do I want to be? That is such a powerful question. That is
Mm.
so powerful, because we could be wanting to be a version of ourselves that is very different than what we are, but aspiring to that. That's the way, I guess, to take those steps to work towards it.
Yeah, I think it's important to say as well, though, that we're looking here at behavioural change because I think at our core we're all good.
Yeah.
I really believe that, and I think that when I look back to who I was and how I operated, I could just see it was behavioural, and it was things that I'd learned as I grew up. There were
Mhm.
conditionings that I had.
Mm.
I don't mind saying that at one point I was passive aggressive in my nature because that's how I learned to be as a child. I was told to be quiet. So the only way I could express that I was not happy was by being moody and stroppy. Not very mature when you're a 30 something year old, but
Yes.
that's the only way I could communicate. That's the way I'd learned to communicate that I wasn't happy. And as soon as somebody pointed it out to me, yeah, well, it took a little bit of time, but I worked on it and happy to say now that I just don't operate in that way anymore.
Yeah.
But deep down, I was still the same person. I am still the same person.
Yeah.
So when I talk about who you want to be, it's about your being. It's about who are you going to embody?
Mhm.
What is that going to look like, and what are you going to
Yeah.
let go of as well? So
Absolutely. All our experiences shape us in so many ways, and because we're not aware of them, it is so hard to understand. But like you say, looking back now, thinking when you were younger, and what behaviours you had, you might see night and day difference. But
mm,
at that moment in that time, you don't know any different, and you just have
yeah,
it's just the way it's normal. It is basically normal whatever you do. So that is really interesting. And yeah, you're right. I think having to think about who you want to be helps you to create those um, habit changes, because at the end of the day, that is what we're doing. We're changing like one habit at a time, one thought at a time, and
yes.
that is really helpful. So why do you think then that it's important to have that vision for your business. What does it actually do? Like, we understand what the vision is and how powerful it can be, but can you give sort of examples there and maybe help us understand, especially for those who don't really know what their vision is and they might be in that space as well?
Yeah. Well, I like to think of it kind of encapsulates the Stephen Covey principle of begin with the end in mind. So start with where you want to end up. And that's kind of what your vision is doing is, what is it am I trying to achieve here? And then I think of it as like you're throwing an anchor out into the future and then you're just winching yourself towards it. And
Right.
that's how I see how um, powerful a vision can be, because it's pulling you, it's drawing you closer and closer. And if you look across time in terms of the powerful vision statements that some big corporations have had, it can really be compelling to get yourself a vision statement, because
Mm-hmm.
the one I think of the most is the Microsoft one. Bill Gates in 1975 said that he wanted to see a microcomputer on every desk in every home running Microsoft software. Now, Apple had something to say about that, but in terms of a vision, in 1975, how would you have
Yeah.
even dreamed that? And that's just, what a visionary does. And it demands all of us to become a little bit of a visionary in the moment for ourselves, for our businesses. But it's drawing on what you want to see, what you want to see in the world, what impact you want to make,
Yeah.
what difference will your business make for others.
Mm.
And I think when I'm working with clients around their vision statement or what it is that they want, I'll always ask them what's the bigger world impact for them. If you look at really good vision statements that are out there, they always mention the bigger world impact.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to think about not just you as a little micro business, but how is it going to how is it going to impact on a macro scale?
Yeah.
And that might be hard to think of when you're a solopreneur, but you will have an impact.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it can be unimaginable. It's
Mm,
almost like we have to imagine that unimaginable before. It's like what it reminds me of is, all these inventors and all these things that have been invented over the years, incredible, electronics, light bulb, whatever you might come across, and they've all had this like undeniable, solid idea that they are going to make it happen when it actually seemed impossible. Like everybody's telling them it's impossible around them, and they're
I
the only one.
agree.
Yeah,
I,
isn't
I,
it?
no, sorry to interrupt. I'm
No.
getting so excited because the conversation is going into a direction that I love. It's what's interesting in those examples you've just given is that it's not just one person.
Mm-hmm.
On a global scale, two or three people around the world are all working on the same thing, and it's almost like a race to get to the invention
Yeah.
point. Certainly, when we've seen certain massive inventions, that's
Yes.
what was going on. So people kind of buy into it, and I think that's, for me, it's evidence that we're all connected. There's a consciousness that we can all tap into, and I think it's for us to sort of explore that for ourselves on an individual, unique basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are our inventors. We're
Mm,
designing our own life. We're designing our own business, and I think that's brings so much more play and fun into what we're doing. And then
mm,
having that vision statement is like, I love how you said about the anchor. That's I'm not going to forget that. That's amazing
mm,
because we can imagine that, and the power of being connected to it. It's almost like, it's not just this thing out there that's detached from us. We are actually physically connected to it. And if you think again about these amazing inventors, and over the years, all, mathematicians, physicists, all astronomers, all the kind of major things that have happened, they have all had like ideas out of this world, and
mm,
but they have been so solid in their belief that they could do it. And I think really that's what I was getting at before, that having that powerful thinking that they are going to achieve, and Ford, the car, or the manufacturing, anything that we can look at and we can take those examples. And I think that's really inspiring to think, well, there are those people doing it. It's just, are we going to step up and kind of put ourselves there and say, well, we are a leader in our own right, and we want to be able to invent our own version of what feels good to us.
Yeah, I love that as well. And I think it's, using that image. I'm a very visual person, but the image of the anchor it's also something that you can really, if you're tethered to it, it's something to
Mm-hmm.
hang on to when things are tough.
Yeah.
So if you've got a very strong vision, it can it can really galvanize you to keep going when
Yeah.
things don't look like they're working out for you. And it's trusting that vision that you've had,
Mm.
and just working your way towards it in micro steps if you need to do that.
That's such a great point, because we're going to have highs, we're going to have lows. There's
Hmm.
no doubt about it. You don't have success without failure. It's a given. And that anchor actually is your anchoring you and keeping you in that zone. That's again like another powerful imagery, that we can hold on to that always, no matter if we're going through a good point or a slightly lower, doubtful, maybe we're more scared at a certain time as well, and that can really bring us back to why are we here. And that again, it goes
Mm.
back to bringing us back to our why, isn't it? It's just grounding us again. So what advice would you give then, Amanda, to others that might be struggling with their business vision? Because we've talked slightly about corporates and kind of big people, really successful people. I mean, all those people started off small, and I think we forget that. So what advice would you give to those solopreneurs who are perhaps just on their own, mums running their businesses at home, for example? Um, how can they bring that business vision? What can they do today that would be really helpful for them?
I think it is about starting with those questions about, what is it that I want to achieve? And I think sometimes, sadly, people go into business because they need to make money. But I think if that's the sole reason you're in business, it's sad to say, but it's not going to sustain you.
Yeah.
It's not enough, because fundamentally our drivers aren't money. Money is a means to an end in a lot of ways, and it's great to have. And, don't get me wrong, but if money is your only driver, you'll be disappointed.
Mm.
You have to find something deep within you, like a calling, if you like. And I think sometimes people think, oh, I haven't got a life purpose, and they feel, you know, a failure almost. And
Yes.
I'm not saying that that's what you need, but you need to find purpose in what you're doing rather than finding a purpose, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's about really being clear about what you want, what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to create,
Mm.
um, and asking yourself those questions. A lot of people I work with haven't asked themselves those questions.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're doing. They know what they're doing on a daily basis. They know their mission, but they haven't really given any consideration to the future at all. And these are big businesses I've worked with as well, that
Mm-hmm.
it's just not on their radar.
Wow.
And so it's a bit like having a map but not knowing where you're going.
Yeah.
And people can be successful still, but it's actually very important that you are very aware and clear about what direction you want to go in. And that can be, you can give yourself a number of benchmarks for that. It can be a financial figure, it could be number of hours of work that you want to do a week. There's so many things that you can craft into it, but it's about being clear about that. So, with mums, they might have a very limited time in the week where they can work on their business, but it's about being clear about when you want to work and how's that going to look and what's that going to achieve in that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think,
Again, it brings us back, doesn't it? Grounding us. I think what's the thought that was in my mind there was, when they're working, when that business vision, they decide to ask themselves that question, because firstly we have to give ourselves permission to say,
hmm
like, I'm going to give myself time to answer this question, because it's not something we can just come up with. Like, it might need some time, and I think it's like investing that time. Like, it's okay to take time to answer that question, because sometimes we're in a very um the world that we live in, we just want quick gratification on everything. So
Mm.
it's a hard question, but we might have to go away, we might have to dig deep, we might have to take our time. But I think another, what do you think about the business vision in terms of asking ourselves? It's a good point, that's a starter, but what about it evolving and changing? Because, like, it could be that, there's a lot of things going on for ourselves. It could be like 1 year, 2 year, 5 years later, things aren't quite the same. So surely we have to then make sure that we're realigning our vision and being in a place where that vision still feels incredible.
Yeah, I agree totally. I think it's never set in stone, and I don't want anybody to think that you set a vision and then you're stuck with it. Not at all. And I love the fact you were talking there about aligning with it. I think the one thing I would like to say is, and this is another thing that another great coach said to me is, you're always in alignment, and you're just not in alignment with the right things. And it's true because if you think about it, if you're not if you're procrastinating, you're aligning with the stuff that you're not supposed to be doing, or
Right.
that's the stuff that's holding you
Mm-hmm.
back. Whereas when you are aligned, that's when you're in flow and you're doing the work and it's powerful
Yeah.
and progressive. So that's what I mean when I think about alignment, and it's actually getting your heart and brain connected into what you're
Yeah.
doing.
Okay.
Um, but I think it's important to acknowledge that your values play a big part here. So when you were saying about what else can they do, you can explore your values, and there are so many things that you can do that. You can just Google values online, and it'll bring you up a whole raft of words, and you can just look and see which values resonate with you to kind of connect with what you're going to stand for in your business. But it's also about having a really clear idea of what it is that you're trying to create in the world. It's
Mm.
I know I keep saying this, but this is so important that people realize that it's why they're here.
Yeah. It's amplifying it, isn't it? It's amplifying it so much that it becomes like it's not just about you anymore. It's like such a big impact that it is on a world scale rather than it being just about this one person thinking, dreaming this up. Because that example you gave with Microsoft, I mean, that's incredible. Because
Mm.
again, at that time in the 70s, who would have even, it didn't even, I can't even, I don't even think there were hardly, there wouldn't have been hardly any computers, and they would have been gigantic. So, for somebody to think that when everything tells them no, I mean, I think it's really good to look at other people and what their vision statements are. I think it could be quite
I
inspiring in
agree.
that way.
You've reminded me that's another point I was going to make is it's actually quite a good idea to look
Mm,
online and see what the big corporations have as vision statements, but also colleagues and other businesses that you work
yeah.
around, find out what their vision is, and you can kind of then support them in their
Mm-hmm.
sort of foresight as well. Um, we're talking about visionaries, that famously Steve Jobs said to John Scully, who was the former CEO of Apple, when he was poaching him from Pepsi, he said, "Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life, or do you want to come with me and change the world?"
Oh,
And I think again, it's that vision of I'm going to change the world,
yeah.
and even if it is one person at a time,
Yeah.
don't undervalue that.
Yeah. It's still incredible, isn't it? So,
Mm.
what tips would you give, Amanda? Could you share? I know you've shared lots of things already that are really helpful, but could you summarise with 3 tips that you could give to somebody who wants to bring their vision into their day to day? What would that look like, and what kind of things would you suggest?
I would look at clearly what it is that you want and then try and embody that on a daily basis. So for me, my moniker is inner calm coach. So every day I look to see how well I'm embodying that as a person. Don't get it right all the time. um, I'm human, but actually, what I would say is when I coach people and I talk about inner calm, it's about compassion ultimately
Yeah.
for yourself and for everyone, and it's self-love, acceptance, it's peace, it's gratitude. So it's about bringing that into your being on a daily basis. So looking at who it is you want to be, and then embodying him or her.
Hmm.
I think that's the number one, I would say.
Fantastic. Yeah, I love that. Um, Being rather than doing, is that just bringing us back to that? So, what else would you share with the other two?
I think it's again it's about finding ways to explore more about your business and what the business is going to bring. So when you were talking about is your vision able to change, I think it is, and I think it's about really honouring what you want to become in the world, honouring your values and making sure that you are doing that on a daily basis. And I think it's worth mentioning here, your audience is mums, and I think a lot of the time we're struck with mum guilt, and that is because we feel we should be doing something
Yeah.
else.
Hmm.
And I would say to that is that you can be a better mom if you honour yourself first. And guilt is simply a thought, simply stems from something you've thought a lot.
Yeah.
That's your belief is that you're not a good mum, you're not being the best mum for your children, you're not spending enough time with them, whatever that narrative is. I just want to share something my 24-year-old son said to me 2, 3 years ago
Yeah.
when I was talking to him about this. I said I felt terribly guilty when, I didn't spend time with you after school, whatever. He said, I didn't see it like that at all, Mum. He said, you were always there. I could always come and see you. And I think that from that perspective, I hope that helps people to see that we see it one way. It's not always the only way to
Yeah.
see it.
Hmm.
And I
So
think
many perspectives.
yeah,
Thank you for sharing that, Amanda. That's really powerful. And as you say, it's taken time for your son to grow up to actually be able to communicate that back to you. But you
hmm
could have, felt 100 times worse than you did. And I
mm,
love how you said, mum guilt is a thought. There are so many different perspectives, and I think there's one question that always comes to mind is, what if we're wrong? With that thought, that one thought, what if it's
mm.
wrong? Do we
Well,
let it just ruin everything?
it's funny. One of my very favourite books is called I May Be Wrong, and it's
Oh,
all about that whole idea that
okay.
we trust our thoughts far too easily, and we may be wrong.
Right. Wow, that's incredible. Okay. So yeah, that's number two then. Like the mum guilt and, shifting that perspective and knowing that there are more than one ways of looking at the same thing, and what
Mm.
we see as being a should doesn't really have to be a should. Um, so is that
I
is
think
that was that your second one? Yeah.
yeah. I think my third one is around alignment because we talked about
Yeah,
aligning
we
with your
did.
vision and aligning
Mm.
with your values and things. And I think that the one thing that I would like to share is around how to align your heart and your brain, because I
Okay.
think that's something that for me has been amazing in terms of transforming how I feel on a
Yeah.
daily basis.
Mhm.
And I think one of the things that I would say if people say, am I in alignment? How do you feel is my answer. If you
Yeah.
feel good, yes, you're aligned. If you don't feel good, there's something off. There's
Right.
nothing wrong with you. It's just you need to work your way back into alignment. And the way you can do that, there is there's a lot of science now which shows that the heart is the biggest biological oscillator in the body. So if you
Mhm.
can bring the heart into line, then it will bring the rest of your organs in your body into line. And there's science behind why that happens, but it's to do with a thing called entrainment. So the body is meant to be in alignment, and the heart is the organ that will bring you into entrainment.
Right.
Now, entrainment will bring everything in line, which means that if you can feel in your heart happy or joy or bliss or wonder or awe, then that will bring the rest of your body into alignment. I hope
Yeah.
that's. Do you understand what I'm
I
saying?
love that. No, I love that. I think the heart is so powerful. I don't know the stats, but I've heard as well that, like, comparing it with our brain, like, we just automatically think that because we have so many thoughts, we have a complicated system in our brain. There's like the subconscious and the conscious, but our heart is something that is far more powerful than we ever give it credit for. And
Absolutely.
I think that it brings that word, the words that are often used, heart centered, it just brings that to life, doesn't it?
Mm. I mean, there are sensory neurites in the heart, so there are brain-like cells within the heart, and if you read any documentation on this, there's evidence that heart transplant receivers have actually adopted traits of their donors. Completely,
Right.
yeah. It's really interesting when you read the reports. Things like being a pianist for the first time when they never played piano
Wow.
before.
Okay.
So there's things to kind of challenge our belief that it all comes from the brain and the mind. It
Yeah.
really doesn't. And
Mm-hmm.
if you are a heart-led entrepreneur, then good for you, because you're going to go places.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about connecting the two. That is so powerful, because, the brain is all good at telling us, having those thoughts, whether they're conscious or not, to kind of keep on guiding us, but we need to just be connected with our heart all the time. Otherwise, like you said, it's that kind of misalignment or aligning with the wrong things, rather than staying on our own path. And our heart is our guide. It's like our internal system of navigation, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah,
It
yeah,
tells us how we feel, and when it feels good, I love that, because bringing it back down to how we feel is always really powerful. And I think when we are in that space, we have much more, like, incredible energy, and we all know that when we're passionately talking about a topic, or chatting to someone who, we're just like in the zone. There's a difference.
yeah.
And
Absolutely,
we
there is.
just
You
need to
feel the
see all
energy,
the,
don't you?
yeah, we need to see all those evidence, those little pieces of evidence everywhere around us. So thank you so much, Amanda, for being such a wonderful guest. You've shared so many insights. I'd love to ask you the last question on, what does building your business with boundaries mean to you?
That's a great question. I love this at the end of your podcast when you ask this. I think for me, it's about being very clear about what you're doing and setting expectations which everybody understands. So you get
Mm,
clear first what you want, and then you tell everybody else that's what you want.
right.
So it's so everybody knows what you're up to, what you're doing, and your vision, and so on. But also they're going to respect that as well. So for me, when I was running my business, I didn't really set my expectations out early doors, and what that meant was people were trampling all over them, taking
Yeah.
advantage, and I was saying yes when I wanted to say no. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, it's about being clear right from the get-go.
I love that. And it's so connective with your vision. I love how you've answered that question, because it comes back to your vision. Respecting yourself, knowing your why, because you are respecting yourself, then obviously other people can respect it when you actually are open and honest and sharing about your
Hmm.
vision too, so that other people are aware. So that's really powerful. I love that. So, how can people find out more about you, Amanda? And I know you have a free gift to share with the listeners too. So, do tell us more.
Yes, so my website is happycoach.co.uk, and I'm really easy to find on LinkedIn. I'm quite active there, and I've got a freebie which is called 10 Top Tips to help you stay sane in business, which
Oh, we need
is
that.
quite challenging sometimes.
We
I know I
definitely
felt
need
like I
that.
was going mad sometimes, but yeah, there's some good stuff in there.
Oh, fantastic. Well, do go check out. I will put the links in the podcast description. And if you're watching on YouTube, it'll be just below the video as well. So, thank you so much for being here, Amanda, and thank you for sharing your wisdom. It's been a wonderful discussion, and I hope that there are so many nuggets that people can take and apply to themselves. That's the most kind of the best thing they could do, is to take this and I guess ask themselves that question that we've been talking about.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Mahnaz.
Stop going nuts trying to focus on multiple things and achieving nothing. Have you ever felt like the filling in a sandwich, squeezed, stressed, surrounded by pressure, unable to prioritise your business dreams? Now, if you feel overwhelmed and torn between building your business and caring for your loved ones, then your business dreams do not have to come last. I've put together an overwhelm-free weekly action plan for busy business mums. You are simply one action away from a whole new perspective. This is where it all begins to start creating a snowball effect. All you need to do is download my weekly action plan, and the link will be in the comments or the podcast description.